Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 81b, top of the page. The words "My time of the Rabbi Meir b'ilan echad," "Umay time the Rabbanan b'shnei ilanot." Amar lo davar sh'rishonim lo yamu boi ta'am. Tish jaleni beis hamedrash kedei levaishani. Vaishani. What is the rationale of Rabbi Meir in that case of the tree? Okay, so this is the statement of Rabbi Shimon ben Eliakim to Rabbi Elazar. He said, what is the rationale of Rabbi Meir in the case of one tree? Individual is obligated to bring first fruits, but it does not recite the passage. And what is the rationale of rabbis that in the case of two trees, the individual is obligated to bring the first fruits, but does not recite the passage? If one owns the ground and is obligated to bring the first fruits to the temple, he should also recite the passage of thanks. If he does not own the ground and therefore is not obligated to recite the passage, why does he bring the first fruits to the temple? Rabbi Elazar said to Rabbi Shimon ben Eliakim, Do you ask me publicly in the study hall about a matter for which the early sages did not give a reason in order to embarrass me? In other words, I do not know the reason, as not even the earlier sages explained this matter. Wow, I guess there was no answer to that. Okay. Amar Rabba Maikushya Din Rabbi Meir Echad Subke Masabkele Perabana Mishneh Ilana Subke Masabkele. Rabba said, what is the difficulty? Perhaps Rabbi Meir is uncertain in the case of an individual who purchases one tree, whether or not the buyer owns the ground. And the rabbis are uncertain in the case of an individual who purchases two trees, whether or not the buyer owns the ground. Due to this uncertainty, the owner of the tree must bring the first fruits to the temple, as he might be obligated in this mitzvah. He does not recite the passage of thanks because it is not definitely established that he is obligated to bring the fruits. The Gemara asks, and is Rabbi Meir really uncertain whether the buyer owns the ground? But it teaches since he did not acquire any land. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir states definitively that the owner of the trees does not own the ground. The Gemara answers say that the Batra should be amended as follows. Perhaps he did not acquire any land. Dimagdish lehu v'habayim yechilinu Diparak lehu v'dim alav bikurim ninu Vikam mafkea lehu Mitruma maser Dim afresh lehu. The Gemara asks, but let us be concerned that perhaps these fruits are not first fruits, and he is bringing non-sacred fruit to the temple courtyard, which is prohibited. The Gemara answers, the case is where he consecrates them. The Gemara asks, but the priest is required to eat first fruits, and he cannot do so if they are consecrated. The Gemara answers, the case is where the priest redeems them. The Gemara asks, but perhaps they are not first fruits, and thereby he removes them from the obligation of Truma and tithes, as one does not separate Truma and tithes from first fruits. The Gemara answers, the case is where he separates Truma and tithes from the first fruits due to the uncertainty over their status. Bishlam Truma Gedoyla Yahiv Le Lakohen Maser Sheni Nami Yahiv Le Lakohen Maser Ani Nami Yahiv Le Lakohen Ani El Maser Rishon Televihu Leman Yahiv Le. The Gemara asks, granted the Truma Gedola that he separates from these fruits, he gives to a priest, and the priest may partake of it, as it has the halachic status of either first fruits or truma gedolah, both of which are eaten by a priest. It is understood with regard to the second tithe as well. He gives it to a priest, who eats it in Jerusalem, either as first fruits or as second tithe. If it is the third or the 6th year of the sabbatical cycle, but instead of second tithe, one is obligated to give the poor man's tithe, here too he gives it to a poor priest, who eats it as either first fruits or poor man's tithe. But with regard to first tithe, which is given to a Levite, to whom can he give it? A Levite may not eat first fruits. Truma gedoila lekohen maasarishin lelevim. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, maaserishon af lekohen. Vidilma bikurim ninu uba kriya lo me'akeves. The Gemara answers the case is where he gives it to a priest, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, as it is taught in a Braita. Truma gedolah is given only to a priest, and first tithe is given only to a Levite. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, first tithe may also be given to a priest. The Gemara asks, but perhaps they are in fact first fruits, and require recitation of the passage of thanks, and yet the owner does not recite it due to the uncertainty. The Gemara answers the recitation is not indispensable, meaning one can perform the mitzvah of bringing first fruits without the recitation. Velo. And the Gemara asks, and is the recitation not indispensable? Ve'amar Zera kol roe lebila en bila makeves boi v'she'en roe lebila bila makeves boi. But doesn't Rabbi Zera say, in the context of offerings, for any measure of flour that is suitable for mixing with oil in a meal offering, the lack of mixing does not invalidate the meal offering. Even though there is a mitzvah to mix the oil and the flour ab initio, the meal offering is a sacrifice, even if the oil and the flour are not mixed. And for any measure of flour that is not suitable for mixing with oil and meal offering, the lack of mixing invalidates the meal offering. And if in any measure of flour that is not suitable for mixing with oil in a meal offering, the lack of mixing invalidates the meal offering. The principle is that initial requirements prevent the fulfillment of mitzvah situations. In situations where they are not merely absent but impossible. Accordingly, the first fruits that are unfit for recitation should not be brought to the temple. David hu Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. De'amar b'tzolim v'shigran b'yad shliach. U'mei shliach b'derech mevi v'einer koyach. My time man dichstiv v'lakachta v'heveiso. The Gemara answers the cases where he renders them exempt from the obligation of recitation, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, who says if one harvested the fruits and sent them in possession of an agent, and the agent died on the way, the owner of any other person brings the first fruits but does not recite the passage of thanks. What is the reason? As it is written, and you shall take, and you shall bring. The Gemara is citing from the following verse with a slight variation. And you shall take of the first of all the fruits of the ground, which you shall bring in from your land that the Lord your God gives you. Deuteronomy 26 and verse 2.